And good afternoon. Chuck Morse here. Thank you for joining the broadcast. I'm doing the program every afternoon at high noon Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday. And my goal here is to develop a community through the Facebook Be Live system. I've sent out notifications. If you're looking at the program live on Facebook, or if you've received a notification, you are welcome to join the program. Clicking on the code, and what happens then, I hope, is that I will receive a notification to accept your link, and I will do so, and you'll be on the air with me. So come on down and join the fun. I mean, this is, I love doing this. This is a great experiment for me, doing radio. And look, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not exactly slick. You're not going to see fancy graphics or, blue lights and news desks and all those other things. I'm just kind of an old-fashioned person in this regard. I don't have the technical side of things down at all. But nevertheless, I shall forge forward in my endeavor to develop an online radio program every single day. The program is rebroadcast and archived on YouTube under the Morse Force. It is also rebroadcast and archived on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and TuneIn, as well as the Morse Force. And it goes out to the Morse Force social network. So I think all those things combined put me in a place where I really could, and I intend to develop this online programming. So what is on your mind this afternoon? The one issue that I was at the forefront of my mind that I wanted to bring up today is this phenomena of Jewish college students who hate the state of Israel. I happen to know a Jewish college student that's a close relative of mine who is attending a liberal college and who has come across this kind of hatred. This particular student wanted to be active in the Hillel chapter on her campus, which is the Jewish equivalent of the Newman Club for Catholics. I mean, I think Protestants have one, Muslims have one. And it's a place for Jewish kids to gather and have social activities and religious activities. And there were several students who were very disruptive at their planning meeting because they said that their college was too Zionist, as they called it, and too pro-Israel, and that everything that was brought up, they would throw in really kind of, in a very nasty way, anti-Israel sentiments. And I'm thinking about this because it's not new. It's been around really since the creation of the State of Israel, and it obviously goes back to, the same impetus that has caused anti-Semitism since time immemorial, I would argue. But I want to examine it a little bit. I want to parse it a little bit. I think that most of these students are well-meaning. They have been sucked in by left-wing agitprop, left-wing propaganda. You'll notice that the enemies of Israel, the real enemies, the Palestinian Authority and some of the people that are in charge of Arab countries, and I'm not saying all because I don't think they all are. They have packaged their anti-Israelist approach in very leftist terms because they understand that the international left is their main benefactor, their main supporter, and their main recruiting ground for anti-Israel sentiment, culturally speaking. And so they make it a pitch. They make an appeal to American college students, many of whom grew up in very secular, left-leaning households. These are not people who generally have been taught to honor traditional values, even though many of them are traditional people. They were not steeped in the idea of believing in God, a creator of the universe. They're secular. They're classic. They've been brought up in much of the educational modalities and cultural modalities that have been co-opted by left-wingers anyway, who hold the cultural high ground in this country. So they're already vulnerable and already recruitable, if you will, by the anti-Israel group, which is well-funded, which is, there's a Palestinian group on this campus. There's an ultra left-wing Jewish group that claims to be Jewish on this campus, that gets probably funding from somebody like a George Soros, who's a former Nazi. And they get, these are people who, can be manipulated. They don't have not just a belief in God, but they don't have an understanding of moral strictures of the Torah, and they don't really have any understanding of basic, not just tenets, but ideas and ideals of Judaism. So they can be sucked into this bizarre idea that somehow there's something bad about Israel, and that they become critical of Israel, not in a way that I might be critical of Israel, which is the same way I might be critical of the United States. I'd criticize its policies. I criticize its overreaches, its mistakes, like any other sovereign nation. That's not how they're critical. They are critical of the idea of Israel as a Jewish state. And so they don't have much of a faith of their own, so they can be manipulated into engaging in that kind of criticism. Why is that? Well, they are critical of Israel for the same reason that the left is critical of Israel. And I would suggest that there are two basic reasons why the left despises Israel. And they go back to Marx himself, one of the major founders of leftist thinking. Those two reasons are because Israel is, number one, capitalist, and because Israel is, number two, Jewish. On the capitalist side of things, Israel, Donald Trump, right? Israel represents a nation that embraces of self-interest, of free trade, of private ownership, of individual identity, individual success, education in the real sense. Israel is a country made up of scrappy individualists who have pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and have created an amazing, vibrant, organic society of people who are free, who are striving to live their lives on their own, and who are striving to, and this includes secular Israelis, I'd add, follow the moral and ethical Torah. Now, whether they believe the Torah was given by God or whether they believe it's simply a series of precepts and laws that are good to follow, I mean, it's almost beside the point. I don't think it's beside the point by any means. But the fact is that they look to a body of law, ethical laws, moral laws, that exist outside of the manipulation of people. It's something that they can look up to and craft their lives to, and hope that they can understand what is good and what is bad, what is sacred and what is profane, not just in their own lives, but in the lives of their society and in the lives of nations. And the left, they want to do away with that because they want to replace that with themselves. They believe that man is the locus of morality and even reality itself. Man decides what's true and not true. Everything is subjective. So when you have a nation that has embraced capitalism, freedom, they sit in a context by which there are rules and laws. Those laws come from the Torah, and those laws are interpreted by people who are qualified to do that interpreting over the generations, going all the way back to the days of Abraham and Moses, right up till today. People who try to understand what God had in mind and resolve problems and set up laws that are in accord with that mind to the degree that we can perceive it. And so you have capitalism, free market, but free market, of course, exists within a moral context, which is, in the case of Israel, Judaism. I would argue in the case of the United States, it's Christianity. I would argue in the case of Saudi Arabia, it's Islam. They've embraced, well, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, capitalist. But what I'm saying is that Israel, by embracing capitalism and Judaism, has embraced a free system by which the individual, the secular, sovereign individual, can be free, can realize their potential, can create, can invent, can live life on their own terms, whether it's becoming a super successful, whether it's becoming a beach bum. The point is that they are free and independent to live their life as they see fit. But they also conform that freedom in the context of a set of moral and ethical precepts that basically dictate not only how they should live it, but also how they should interact with their neighbors and with other nations. And this is very anti-left, because the left, once again, from a capitalist standpoint, they hate capitalism, they despise it. They want to create this kind of artificial type of existence where everyone becomes part of a forced collective, where we all become like bees in a beehive or ants in an ant colony. Everyone exists to serve others. We lose our, we have to give up things like property and God and family, identity itself. We become a part of a system. They love to talk about the system. Capitalism is not a system. Capitalism is the way the world is. Capitalism is natural. They are the ones who are creating a system. And of course, they hate Judaism because they hate religion. They want to see an end to a belief in a supernatural creator of the universe. They want to replace that with man. And this idea is something that has a powerful allure, particularly for young people, particularly for privileged young people. In America, particularly white young people who feel that, from themselves, they're alienated from their own spiritual nature. They just, they live as the ancient Greeks had a cult called the Epicureans, or the Epicurus in Hebrew. The Talmud talks about this, where they basically are living for the moment. There's no future, there's no past. Whatever feels good is good. The ultimate goal is to be happy, to feel sensation, and to experience pleasure. And so they in a sense, by being in a condition like that, which is somewhat devoid of recognizing a spiritual and a supernatural component, they don't have any hard beliefs. And so naturally, which is the case, and G.K. Chesterton talks about this in some of his treatises brilliantly. So since they have no belief in a God, a spiritual side of human nature, they need to look to something outside themselves. And they're filled with rage and envy and hate at people who do have that idea, or societies that have it. Looks like I'm getting some comments here. Because of religion, the religion of liberalism trumps the religion of Judaism. I couldn't agree with you more. By the way, if you want to join the program live, if you have the nerve to, and why not come down? Click on the code and you will show up on the screen. You'll be seen on the Facebook page and on YouTube and on my archive. I know that some people may not, maybe you feel a little shy. I get that. But this is what I'm experimenting with. I want to develop this sort of online community where people will join me. Next week, I'm hoping, in fact, I will be beginning to introduce guests. I've already done it once. It worked very well. And I'm going to be bringing people in on various sides of a political equation to talk. And then we're going to also invite guests. I mean, it's amazing technology. So come on down. You're welcome to join me here. Just click on the code and you'll be put up live. So getting back to my commentary here. Young people who have been brought up in this hardcore secular atmosphere, this belief in, frankly, in evolution, which I don't want to go into too deeply right now. I've written a book on the topic, available at Amazon, who don't have any hard belief in a supernatural. They don't believe that there is a moral decalogue, there's moral code that exists outside of themselves. They're looking for something, so they look to externals, they look to pleasure, they look to, and that's why, of course, you have great socialist dictators rise up and leaders like Stalin or Hitler or Lenin or any of these other mass murderers. They're there because there is no belief in God, so they can step into the void and be like the God king. I mean, they could be like Pharaoh was in ancient Egypt. People worship them. You ever notice how left-wingers, they worship their leaders? You know, we don't do that on the conservative side. When they say that we worship Trump, and I've heard this from liberal left programs, they're projecting their own values. People don't worship Trump. We admire Trump for standing up for American values, but we disagree with him on many things. I mean, we are dissenters. We don't. It's not something that we do. It's not a mindset. Whereas on the left, they worship their leaders. They worship Barack Obama. I've heard this among liberals, even in my own family and people that I know. Oh, did you see Barack Obama being interviewed by David Letterman? Oh, they're all talking about this. I mean, he talked about his children. No, I mean, and when he was running, I mean, it was the most authoritarian, culturally speaking, thing I've ever seen in this country. Women were fainting and they were having, climaxing sexual experiences. Let's put it that way. This is not something that's, particularly becoming in America, that we don't do that. We don't worship people. When Hillary Clinton, I remember, just one more example, when she was running for the U.S. Senate in New York State, the New York Times Sunday section of the paper, the magazine, had a cover picture of her, like a kind of an animation, like a caricature, standing on Manhattan, and the other New York State, this colossal like picture. Worshipful. It was like she was like some kind of a massive god. You never see a conservative portrayed like that, ever. That's a leftist meme, and that's what the left does. They worship their leaders. That's because they don't worship God. It's because they don't worship anything. I mean, you have a leader step in. Now, as far as, and also as far as the anti-Israel thing goes, especially with left-wing Jewish kids, they don't have anything other than, besides the hero worship, there is no positive values that they can connect with. Do you ever notice that when you hear, like I was watching some of the minutes to the Women's March, the pussy hats and all that, the whole thing is nothing but rage and resentments at unspoken enemies. They don't really come out and name them. It's all this innuendo. We know who's responsible for the negativity and the divisiveness, and we all know who that is. We don't have to say it. And it's all this hate and rage and kind of coming together in shared hatreds. There's nothing positive there. They're not offering anything. They talk about racism, right? What have they ever offered minority communities, really? What have they ever offered people of color other than feeding them the sense of rage and resentment and envy at people who might have more than them? I mean, it's the same calling card the left has always used, the class consciousness card. Look at the guy down the street, has more than you. You don't like it. You're jealous. They appeal to the worst side of our nature. You should use us, the government, to seize some of his property so you can feel good. It feeds into your envy and your sense of wanting to stop that person from being successful, because their success